Hey, it's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling. We are located in Fresno, California. I am minister of the Spiritual Awareness Center in Fresno, California. And Fresno, California is an awesome place to be because it is the heart of the Central Valley, and the Central Valley is the heart of California. And as I like to say each week, we got a lot of heart going on here. We've got a lot of other things going on here, too, that's good in so many different ways. I enjoy being here. I enjoy sharing with you each week as we go through New Thought and Science of Mind, Religious Science. Probably for the next week or two, like I did last week, I'm just going to kind of be covering some topics, some things that have come up in conversation with some of my friends or people that have either texted me or emailed me that they have questions about. One of the things, and depending on where you're at and who you're talking to, I don't know how big of an issue it is, but I know for some people it's an issue of some sort, and that is how in religious science, New Thought, the outcome, the demonstration, doesn't necessarily equate to the advertising, if you will, and that's a rather simplistic way of putting it. But I've talked to some friends that have been in New Thought and in religious science for a while, and there's a certain level, if you will, within certain people or certain groups of people of doubt or concern. You find conversations such that, we really need a New Thought 2.0 or religious science 2.0 and, many other things. Always we refer back to the idea that, Ernest Holmes said we're open at the top. And I guess I'll start there. And what I'm going to share with you today is just my own personal opinion regarding that, and you can take it for what it's worth. Ernest Holmes did say we are open at the top. But he also, if you go back to the Science of Mind textbook, he defined Science of Mind as a science. And when he talked about it as a science, and you find that, I believe we can find that in the early pages, if you will, of the first chapter in the introduction itself, where Holmes talks about the thing itself. And he says, if I can find this right offhand, whatever the nature of any principle may be, insofar as it is understood by anyone, it may be understood by all who take the time to investigate it. This does not require an unusual degree of intelligence, but rather a practical application of what we now know in order that we may increase our knowledge. The study of the science of mind is a study of first cause, spirit, mind, or the invisible essence, that ultimate stuff, the intelligence from which everything comes, the power behind creation, the thing itself. And he says, as we go through this, he talks about this as being a science. A lot of the early practitioners, founders of the New Thought, referred to this as a mental science or a mind science, or various variations on that theme of science. But when we look at what Holmes understood science to be, basically what he understood it to be was that if you find something and you develop a theory behind what it is that you find, a process or something of a principle, for example, and if you test this principle with some kind of an experiment, if it confirms what your theory projected that it would confirm, and if you do it and you teach someone else or tell someone else how to do the same thing, they should get the same result. Very simplistically, if you add A to B and you get C, then anybody else that adds A to B should get C. And that's how he understood when he was talking about the science of mind and spirit. That's how he understood the science part. That if you treat If you believe, if you treat, you should expect a demonstration. Now, it's very simplistic. Science, being what it is, requires that we go a little bit deeper. We have to have a belief. We have to be in alignment with principle. All the different things that we've talked about in the past, if you happen to be a New Thought individual or a religious science person, you've probably heard them over and over again. But ultimately, if we add A to B, we should be able to get C. Again, this is only my own personal opinion, but I think a lot of people, under the caveat of we're open at the top, have added a lot of things into the mix that we don't necessarily see fit that science definition, if you will. Now, I'm not casting any judgment or anything else upon various things that have been added into our family of treatment, but if they don't fit Holmes's basic understanding of science, maybe they need to be a part, maybe a very important part, of a spiritual expression that's not science of mind. Because a lot of times, individuals that attempt to put some of these various things into practice fail to demonstrate. And oftentimes, if they get caught up in that, they get discouraged. And if they get discouraged, they move on. We can, I believe, understand science as Holmes understood it. And we can put that principle, the scientific principle, back into practice with an expectation to see greater demonstration in our practitioners in the work they do. And I say practitioners not only as our certified or licensed practitioners, but as each and every individual puts their own spiritual practices into practice for themselves, maybe their friends and family. There's a level of knowingness, if you will, a level of commitment, a level of embodiment, a level of belief, a level of faith. Jesus said and taught, and Holmes, echoed this teaching, that it's done unto us as we believe. And I've talked oftentimes about, when we talk about belief, we're not just talking about that if I do a treatment, for example, that my belief in the treatment is all that I need. Because our belief is always the universality of all it is that we believe. And sometimes we kind of get caught up in things that don't necessarily align themselves with principle, and that is embodied in our day-to-day life experience. And there's a lot of stuff that can go into that what that includes. For some people, it's that they're almost addicted to fear, and yet they're treating for various things, and their treatment seems to fall short, doesn't demonstrate. For some people, they want to hang on to their judgments, their prejudices, and I'm not talking about just from one person to another or one group to another. It can be about various things, various philosophies, whatever it is that we may hold judgment against. Again, when Jesus was teaching, he said, "Judge not, lest ye be judged." And it's important that we understand that. And he also said, when you judge with right judgment. And he's talking about when you judge on a spiritual level. And we can take those things are not diametrically opposed. They're actually two very powerful tools that, as we examine our own life, our own spiritual practices, we can use them as standards to compare where we're at in our own spiritual expression, our own spiritual life. We can know that we don't judge out there, and we can know that as we're trying to discern truth from relative, and I'll put it in those terms, that we do judge with righteous judgment or right judgment, because we want to align ourselves with principle. We want to align ourselves with the divine. We want to be in that consciousness, if you will, of the causative factor, of the absolute. Within the absolute, there is no doubt, there is no judgment, there is no prejudice, there is no limitation in any way. So to the degree that we, in our own consciousness, hold beliefs, understandings, feelings, whatever it is, that fall into that category, to that level, we limit ourselves as we're doing our spiritual practice, our affirmative prayer. One of the things, and caveat, folks, I really am old school when it comes to this. I'm not right up to the cutting edge. I believe that, Ernest Holmes was a practitioner. He got results. I believe that Joel Goldsmith was a practitioner. He got results. I believe that Joseph Murphy was a practitioner, and he got results. And the list goes on and on and on and on. The commonality between all those things is those are people that are no longer around. And personally, I believe, again, as I said, I think we've incorporated a lot of new whatever into our spiritual understanding that has, in a way, created limitation in our ability to demonstrate as they did. Because you either have to accept that these individuals and those that others that we know, they actually saw manifestations. They actually saw demonstrations. And it wasn't just about getting parking places. It ran the universe, if you will, of things that we can treat for, from limitation, relationship to disease. There was a minister here in the Fresno area, Reverend Don Ringnes, and Don told me, he's no longer with us, but he told me when he first came to Fresno, he hadn't been here very long, and he got a phone call from a woman, and she wasn't a religious science woman, but she was a woman that had heard about this church that did this kind of prayer stuff, and she wasn't real sure about it, and she asked him, and he spoke with her for a while, and she kind of got an understanding, and she asked him if he'd treat for her. And so he did, right there on the phone. He hadn't met her before, and he never spoke to her since. They spent some time, he treated, because she had been diagnosed with a terminal condition, given 6 months to live, with a surgery that was going to happen within a week or two of the time of their phone call. And the surgery was not to create a cure, but to just allow her to live the rest of her life on this earth in a more comfortable manner. So Don treated for her, the Reverend Don did. And it was quite a few weeks later, he received a check from this woman in the tune of $10,000. It seems that when the doctor started to do the surgery, what they were going to do didn't need to be done, and what diagnosis she had was no longer her diagnosis. And the prognosis for her at that point was a further long and healthy and potentially happy life. These are the works of practitioners. These are the works that we should be seeing on an ongoing basis within New Thought. And again, I'm only speaking from my own viewpoint, my own understanding, and maybe even my own judgment. And maybe I should just kind of let that go. But I believe so strongly in what it is that we do teach. I believe so strongly in our ability not only to create a better life and world for ourselves, but to create a better world, period. A light that exists within each and every one of us as we put it into practice literally changes the world, even if we're only a single individual. I'm going to take that as our first break, and I'll see you when we come back.
With Organic Pastures Raw Milk, you're getting a product that has been meticulously managed from grass to glass. From our pastures to our dairy, creamery, and distribution, we work hard to produce a product that is safe and clean for you.
Got lactose intolerance or dairy allergies? Discover delicious raw milk and discover dairy the way it's supposed to be. We provide tours and would love to see you. Come visit the cows, watch the milking, the cheese being made, and learn all about raw milk. We're just 20 miles south and west of Fresno, California. Call to schedule a tour at 559-846-9732.
The Saga of Bridget and Amanda by Carol Love Forbes brings to life the struggles of historical women in early America. Find the saga of Bridget and Amanda on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and order your copy today.
You enter this door with expired tags. Beyond is another dimension, a dimension of regulations, a dimension of long waits. You have reached the registration zone. What looks like an ordinary shop is actually Mitchell Smog, located in the heart of the Tower District, a few minutes from the DMV. Mitchell Smog offers your vehicle a STAR-certified smog inspection. So remember Mitchell Smog when you need to pass through the registration zone.
Christy Majors is your local real estate connection. With a solid, hard-working team, traditional listings, short sales, probate listings, and foreclosures are treated in a personal and caring way and close in a timely fashion. Since 2009, Team Majors has closed more than $75 million worth of homes all over California. Reliable and trustworthy, Christy and her team will go the extra mile for every client, whether selling or buying a home. So give Team Majors a call at 559-464-5606 or visit teammajors.com.
After a tough day at the track, cleaning up can be a time-consuming task. That's why we use Extreme Cleaner, the non-toxic, biodegradable, multi-purpose cleaner and degreaser. Extreme Cleaner cuts through even the toughest of grease and grime. Fast. Great for cleaning tools and work surfaces. Extreme Cleaner. Tough on grime, safe on the environment. Visit extremecleaner.com to find a retailer near you.
When you experience flooding in your home, you need to call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service at 559-213-9430. After soaking in water for only 45 minutes, carpet starts to come apart. Clean Master Emergency Flood Service can help, and not just with carpet repair. They also offer carpet cleaning, upholstery cleaning, carpet installation, and more. Call Clean Master Emergency Flood Service, and they'll be there in 60 minutes. Call 559-213-9430. Diane Ainsworth's books of poetry and scriptures are available at condiopress.com and as ebooks at amazon.com. Diane hopes the words in her books will convey the unconditional love Jesus has for you. Learn more at godsinspirationsblog.wordpress.com and get a copy of Diane's books today.
Ghost Golf is Fresno's most spooktacular family entertainment center. It's frightening how much fun you'll have on our 18-hole indoor haunted graveyard course. Skeletons welcome you, but watch out! All sorts of creatures may come to life. Ghost Golf is perfect for scary good parties, so book yours today. You'll get free plays at the Mummy Shooting Gallery, arcades, and air hockey. Check out our party and weekday specials online and like us on Facebook. Come play at family-friendly Ghost Golf. Good times will haunt you.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I am your host, Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center from Fresno, California, and I'm talking today about some of my own personal thoughts on treatment and demonstration and what we do and don't see as far as I've been able to discern. But anyway, before we went to the break, I was talking about our early pioneers in New Thought religious science. Ernest Holmes, his brother, various other individuals that some of them we know, some of them we don't know of, but they were there, and they created a consciousness of demonstration that was the, if you will, the forefront of what it is that religious science was all about. It was a science, and in this science, the purpose was to demonstrate, to see manifestation. I don't know that, I think sometimes we spend more time looking in other directions than we do, sticking with our true fundamental understanding of what is truth, how to put it into practice, what is the science as it comes to, mental scientific treatment, and what does that mean for each of us, and what should we expect as we put it into practice. So one of the things that I think, again, this is my own understanding, I think we get a little lost in the idea of dealing with beliefs. one of my, like I say, I'm kind of old school on a lot of this stuff, but I go back to Christian Larson. He wrote a book. It was called What is Truth? And when I first read it and I got to these 2 pages, I went, this is so important to understand. What he wrote, and you may become aware of it in other ways, but he says, what we believed yesterday, we frequently discard today, and what we believe today, we're quite liable to discard tomorrow, possibly with few expectations. Nevertheless, while the beliefs of today remain, we are so thoroughly convinced that they are true that practically nothing can change our minds. In fact, our present beliefs sometimes have such a power, this is important, our present beliefs sometimes have such a powerful hold upon our minds that we have absolutely no desire to think differently than we do, for one, and what is more, those very beliefs, as a rule, refuse to be examined. It is certainly mental bondage, he says, with a vengeance, when a mind dare not examine the credentials of its own beliefs and is so completely under the control of its own convictions that it is unable to question their genuineness or authority. There's a quote that I like to share, and it goes something like, the things that we say and do are limited by what we fail to notice. And because we fail to notice that we have failed to notice, there's little that we can do to change until we notice how failing to notice has shaped our thoughts and deeds. We oftentimes hold beliefs that we're not aware that we have. And we hold these beliefs in the subjective mind. They're there, they're real, and they have a great influence in our life. Oftentimes very limiting, very binding, influence in such a way that they control our life experience in ways that we'd rather not have, but we're not consciously aware that they're there. We don't seek to necessarily address them. And yes, oftentimes we do treat generally for limiting beliefs, and we do treat for, things that may not be right at the front edge of our consciousness. But sometimes, as we do that, and as we're treating, the beliefs that we hold are not necessarily because they are beliefs, and our beliefs do create our reality. They're not necessarily up for examination, if you will, as we speak our word. As we speak our word, we do that in consciousness. And that doesn't necessarily mean that as we speak our word in consciousness, that things that we hold in opposition that we're not aware of to what it is that we want to believe or what we say we believe, they may not necessarily respond in the way that we'd like them to do. One of the ways that we know that these things are happening is when we look out into the world and see what we are experiencing in our life that are things that we say we don't believe in. Lack, limitation, disease, so on and so forth. You know the list goes on and on. Oftentimes, as a practitioner, when we treat for people, we're not seeing the kind of response that we believe that we should see as a result of the treatment. And a lot of that goes to how we understand treatment, how we do treatment, and there's a lot to cover there. But this is just one thing for us to consider. If we're not seeing what we want to see, maybe it's time to look where we haven't looked before to see what it is that we need to see. There's many ways that we can do it. One of the ways when I'm working with people and we talk about this, and I say, when you're experiencing things in your life that are in opposition to what you say you believe, maybe it's time to look and see what it is that you really believe that you're not aware of. Make a list. Don't do it in 5 minutes. Don't do it in 5 hours. Do it over a period of days. Put it on the table. When you think of something, add to this list. When you finally get the list kind of fleshed out, then you want to spend some time and kind of categorize these things. They fit in this category of belief. They fit in this. Maybe there's a cross belief or whatever. But when you finally get that organized, what do I have to believe for these things to be true? Well, consciously, I don't believe that necessarily. But obviously, if I'm experiencing them in my life and my beliefs create my reality, then there's something there that I need to address. And that's just one simple way of doing it. Having said all that, something very interesting. In doing some recent reading, and I read a little bit, I went back and I was reading Emma Curtis Hopkins Class Lessons, 1888. Bear with me. I want to read this to you because this is an amazing realization here. Chapter 3, Courage to Go On. She says, perhaps nothing strikes the young student of science with more dismay than to find that so many of the people who have learned it still suffering from attacks of bodily illness, still having disease and issues in the family, unable to cure their cases and exhibiting signs of their own what she called sinfulness just as plainly as other people. It suddenly occurs to the beginner that the science cannot do all it claimed to do for it, that there must be limits to the power over life, character, and work of its advocates. And so it does look at first sight. Can there be a reasonable explanation, she asks, that will give us the courage to go on? She says, let us see. Every mind taking up the science is shrouded in the darkness of false beliefs that must of necessity show forth as false conditions. Again, do we hold beliefs that are creating conditions in our life that we claim that we don't believe about? She says, false conditions are the not good conditions, whether they be pride and meanness of character or neuralgia of the face. False beliefs are false states of mind, clouds of darkness, making the mind unfit to send forth curing thoughts for the body or cleansing thoughts for the character. They must be thrown out or off the mind before the conditions will be right. Well, we get that on some level, but now we're talking about practitioners. And she says, how are they to be thrown out? He says, there's only one way under heaven to clear the mind of its errors, and that is to take each error in turn and call it by name and declare that it has no reality in it. Now, again, it's true that we can generally treat for beliefs, but maybe if we're having some issues, it's time to go a little deeper within ourselves. And so, few minds, she says, can be found willing to do this. Now, think back what Christian Larson said. These beliefs will oftentimes even create opposition to us beginning to discover those as our belief. So, few minds can be found willing to do this. Every mind, almost without exception, desires to make cures and bring forth great results without having to be cleared of its own beliefs, old beliefs, and expects to have the arguments for healing given to it along with old thoughts, no matter what they are, and to be able to use them at once as effectively as does those who have been scientifically faithful. In other words, those that have aligned themselves with principle in mind and spirit have seen demonstrations and manifestations a result of the treatments they do. We all want that on some level. That's why we're here. Are we all willing to do what we need to do to find the here for us, each and individually? It is impossible to look except with amazement upon certain students who at first set out with faithful rejection of the beliefs they had held, and while faithful they were able to bring forth healing fruits, but who after a while have grown tired of the rigor of the law and have let the same old errors come creeping back to rest like clouds upon the hills or fogs in the valleys of the mind. Worldly ambitions, intolerances of other people's rights or other countless errors, then the healing thoughts, which only come forth from the mind that is willing to be trained, no longer sound reasonable, no longer have potency, and these people complain bitterly of the science and cannot be counted in with real scientists while they remain in this unscientific state. If we begin to depend on things outside of ourselves, we kind of step off the reservation, so to speak. We got to find it within ourselves. Within ourselves is where we hold our own beliefs, those that we know and those that we don't know. When we begin to examine our expression, when we begin to examine our ability to treat, when we begin to examine how we're seeing demonstration in our life or the lives of those that we're treating for. You know, years ago, I was a doctor of chiropractic, and one of the things that doctors of chiropractic have to do on an ongoing basis is continuing education. I know practitioners do that too, but do you do it just to get requalified, or you do it on an ongoing basis? Are you continually looking to improve the demonstration ratio, if you will, as you treat? Oftentimes, one of the issues, and I've heard people complain about this, is that when we treat for ourselves or someone else, if we don't see a response, well, let's say in ourselves, we tend to self-victimize, or we victimize those who we have treated for, that obviously they don't believe right, they don't believe enough, so on and so forth. You know, that's not necessarily a real positive thing on so many levels, but it's also, if you will, a glaring light within our relationship with ourselves and those that come to us as practitioners. Okay, Holmes says we treat until we see demonstration. Well, if I'm not seeing a demonstration, I don't stop treating. If I'm someone that's having treatment done for me, I still self-treat. We look to see, to uncover, to put light upon possibly things that may limit us. What we don't do is accept defeat. God is indefeatable. Spirit is indefeatable. First cause is indefeatable. If we accept that on some level and say, and just slough it off as, well, you know, someone didn't believe right or they didn't believe enough, we've got to stop doing that. What we've got to do is learn when things aren't demonstrating in the way that we, you know, expect them to. We need to learn. We need to grow. Life creates obstacles for us to transcend, to overcome. Sometimes those obstacles for a practitioner are in treatment. So we got to grow. We overcome. We transcend. We don't stop. We don't give up. And for sure, we don't blame. To blame is to bring judgment. And we don't judge. When we judge, we begin to separate ourselves. When we separate ourselves, we separate from our ability to treat successfully. We've got to know that. We've got to own it. And it's something that's near and dear to my heart. See, I don't know that we need anything new. What I think we need to do is revisit what we were and maybe re-embody that and put it into practice. And as we do so, just like when Dr. Holmes was walking the face of the earth, when Robert Hornaday or William Hornaday was walking the face of the earth, when Reginald Arnold was walking the face of the earth, when Jack Addington was walking the face of the earth, these individuals didn't just write books. They weren't just ministers on stage. They were practitioners, and they held themselves out to a certain level as a practitioner, and they wrote about those things. We have evidence of those things. Do we have that evidence today? I don't know that, you know, what I'm seeing. And as much as I loved, you know, claiming that Fresno is the heart of the Central Valley, and the Central Valley is the heart of California, doesn't necessarily mean that we get the greatest influx of information coming through here. But I'm always looking for examples, for you know, people to share testimonials, if you will, where demonstration has unfolded in their life. We know that there are people that are not necessarily new thought per se, but of Christian faith that, you know, espouse a certain new thought philosophy that they've melded into their, you know, their Christianity. And we know that they have made claims to seeing demonstrations. We know that they have made claims to teaching people that they can do the same thing in their lives. You know, it's kind of like we've gone into the closet, we've gone into the shadows. We need to step out. The reason why, and I'll talk about this when we get in our next segment, the reason why is because more than ever, what we know as New Thought individuals, regardless of what flavor of New Thought it is, what we know within ourselves is what the world needs to know on a greater basis. And I'm not talking about necessarily going out and being a missionary or door knocking. I'm talking about raising our light, raising the level of our inner presence to express as an outer presence as we go forward. Because I don't know about you, but it looks to me that, the world could really use us. I'll take our next break, and I'll see you when we come back.
Get your copy of Crouching Mama Hidden Veggies today, packed with recipes of delicious food cooked with hidden vegetables, so you can feel confident that you and your family are eating your veggies.
Contact Sprague Electric for all things electrical, solar installations, battery systems, troubleshooting, repairs, and more. Call 559-760-0712. SpragueElectric.com.
Are you or a member of your family beginning to show early signs of forgetfulness that may be Alzheimer's or dementia? The only way to be sure is through an expensive brain scan. Dr. Parminder Bhatia of the Neuropain Medical Center is helping in a clinical trial for those with memory problems, dementia, or mild Alzheimer's disease. Those accepted into the trial will have all costs paid for, from diagnosis to evaluations and trial medicine. There is no cost for those who are accepted in the trial, and there may even be some compensation for the patient's time and travel. For more information, call 559-437-9700, extension 310, and visit neuropain.com.
Hi, I'm the host of New Thought Talk, Reverend Steve Walling, and I want to take a moment today and give you an opportunity to support our ministry, support our show. You can do that through a PayPal payment. You send the payment through PayPal to the email address of Madera, MADERASAC @gmail.com. If you don't have a PayPal account, you can go down below the link and you can find where you can enter a debit or credit card. I want to thank those that have supported us and those that will continue to support us. You have a great day. Bye. Hey, welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling, and today I'm just kind of sharing some of my thoughts about treatment, demonstration, the science of mind as a science, mental science, and our place in it and our role, if you will, in life itself. So, Raymond Charles Barker, Dr. Barker, Treat Yourself to Life. In the opening, he says, to the thousands of students who have used and profited by the techniques set forth in this book, thus proving that they have learned their subconscious mind, to be their best friend. Our subconscious mind, the repository of memories, beliefs, feelings, that which is always aware at the level of its awareness, which is always open to suggestion, and it's always open to be manipulated, if you will, by our conscious acceptance of what's going on in the material world around us. When we look out, you may hear that siren going by as I'm speaking right now. There's stuff going on. There's always stuff going on. Do we accept that as the way it has to be? Do we accept that it can only change by us going out into the world telling the world how to change? Or do we begin to look where our true power is, and that is within ourselves? And it comes down to a lot of something called practice. Practice is an interesting thing, and I've shared this many times, but it's one of our go-to things that you can't practice enough. And I heard years ago, and it's a line that I love, practice makes, and oftentimes people want to say practice makes perfect. Well, practice doesn't make perfect, but what practice does is it makes improvement. And we can't really improve without practice. Dr. Holmes believed this also. At the back of the copy of the textbook that I happen to have, I just want to go through and read. There's a concordance back here. And under the word practice, I'm not going to look up each page, but listen to this. He says, too little practice. He's talking about not getting enough. Practice of the science of mind, fundamental to our practice. By this practice, the soul, and you can figure that out. Practice, we make no attempt. Practice is a definite statement. Daily practice in our meditations. In practice, we state clearly, to practice the presence of God, part of our everyday practice. Everyday practice. Truth, then, it is to practice it. Practice the truth. And there's a few more. But one of the things that, and it's another one of my go-to pages, if you will, in the textbook, and it's at the end of the general summary on page 233. And Dr. Holmes says, final conclusion. In conclusion, what the world needs is spiritual conviction, followed by spiritual experience. I would rather see a student of this science prove its principle than to have him or her repeat all the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered. You know, it's not about getting that intellectual knowledge between our ears. It's not about what we think we know. It's only about what we can prove, and we can only prove it through practice. And his final sentence in that paragraph says, it is far easier to teach the truth than it is to practice it. And we have to know that. We have to know that for ourselves. We have to, and think back to that segment that when I was reading from Katie's book, and she's talking about, science practitioners that get away from it, okay, that want to fall back into their old ways. And it's very easy to fall back into your old ways. Just think about habits that you have changed in your life that it could be very easy to fall back into. Some of them are addictions and some of them are just habits. But as we change, as we grow, as we begin to create and become and demonstrate something more in our own individual lives, in order to do that, to grow and to hold that level of expertise, if you will, and the practice of religious science, science of mind, and new thought is an expertise. It is a practice. It is just like it's a skill, just like learning to play an instrument, for example. I've known in my life some individuals that have gone on to be incredibly successful individuals playing music, from classical music to rock music or whatever. When if they stop, if they put their instrument down, they go back 6 months later and pick it up. Now, as a professional, they won't do that. But sometimes towards the latter parts of their life, maybe when they retire, they put it down and they can get together for that, afternoon session with some friends, but they're not playing at the level they used to. If we cease the practice of science of mind and spirit in our personal life, we lose the level of proficiency, if you will, of our ability when we seek to treat. For people that think that, because they've moved on beyond practitioner, that being a practitioner is something they don't have time for, I encourage them to take that time. It's a practice, it's a skill, and you'll never get any better than the best you were the last time you did unless you continue to practice. So we practice and we practice, and in our practice we improve, and that's what practice does. Practice makes improvement, not perfection, and it's important. Okay, so I said before the break why I feel that it's so important. And this is another one of those things, if you read the writings of Dr. Holmes and other New Thought individuals that have an understanding of the power that New Thought has in the world itself, the power of creating peace, harmony, reducing the chaos, bringing calm, bringing the divine principle of positive creation, expressing love, being a greater light. We can go on and on and on. All these things, too often, because we see the world from a very limited perspective, we let the world tell us the what is, and we get overwhelmed by it. Too often, sometimes people can get discouraged. As a practitioner, I said earlier in this show, we don't accept non-demonstration. We don't accept non-manifestation. We keep doing. We keep practicing. We keep doing our treatments. We keep studying. We keep going within, making that interconnectedness. The light exists within us. The Father lives within us, although God is everywhere present, if you will. The only way we can communicate is by finding the light within ourselves. That light is always there, and it's within every individual. There's a law that responds to our word when we speak our word, but when we speak our word, it's not the English language that we're speaking. It is the word within us as we understand it at the level of our internal understanding. And if there is doubt behind that, if there is a belief that is less than, a belief that takes us out of alignment with principle, as we speak our word, it's at that level that our word is spoken. We want to upgrade, if you will. If you want to talk about Science of Mind 2.0, it should be Science of Mind 2.0 within me, within my understanding, within my ability to express that. Dr. Johnny Coleman, Universal Foundation for Better Living, her understanding that we have a bigger God. You've got to know that we have a bigger God, and you've got to be unwilling to accept anything less than an understanding of that bigger God as expressed in your life. If you're a practitioner, as expressed in your demonstration. The Word was with God, the Word was God, and the Word is God. There's one life. That life is God. That life is perfect. That life is our life now, and that hour is the universal hour. There is no other. There is no looking and saying, well, there's myself and. There's only a oneness of which myself is an integral part of, but not separate from, nor is anybody else. We've got to own that. We've got to claim that. We claim it for ourselves. Our light shines brighter. Our light shines brighter. We influence without even being aware of it. We influence those around us. We influence beyond those around us, and it's something that only as you begin to consciously and expressly experience are you really able to wrap your mind around it. But as you do, as you begin to kind of get a feel for that flavor, if you will, it becomes a flavor that you never want to be without, no matter where you're at, no matter what you're doing. And when we get to that level, that really is when we get to the level when we talk about, practicing the presence of God, in all that we do. And that's not just when we're doing treatment or just when we're studying. In all that we do, in all that we experience, in all that we express. Can we have that loving presence within us, expressing through us at all times, regardless of what's going on around us? Can we do that? The answer to that is yes, we can. But we have to lift ourselves up to that level. And, as we lift ourselves up, again, we lift those around us up too. We never discount the truth. We never discount the absolute. You can't. There's but one truth and one absolute. What we can do is look out in the world and kind of get an understanding where the absolute or the truth is not in expression, where there are conditions that people express or understand as causes. They're not true causes, but they're conditions that they experience. We look out in the world or we talk to people. When they talk about evil, we can't accept evil as a thing of itself. It is an experience, no doubt about it. But if our individual internal belief, those subjective beliefs that are held, if we still believe in evil of some form, now we may not call it evil, we may call it that experience we had growing up where we were, harmed, you can fill in the blank, or, there's this, that, or the other. You can fill in the blanks on those, but anything that is not in harmony with divine principle, anything that we accept as a part of our defining the meanness of who we are, if it's not in that absolute understanding, then we've accepted the relative, and we've accepted it at some level as a belief. And if we've accepted it as a belief, then it demonstrates in our life. And if it demonstrates in our life, it will also demonstrate in our practice as a practitioner. We seek to eliminate those things from our life. We seek to eliminate beliefs from ourselves. But we got to be willing to look in areas where we've never looked before, in a way. As Emma Curtis Hopkins says, we got to be willing to call those beliefs out one by one. Well, I don't know if we really have to do them singly one by one, but if we're experiencing things in our life as a practitioner or as a practitioner of New Thought as our personal philosophy, faith, and way of life, then we've got to be willing to call out some things that we've just accepted on some level as being so and make the claim they are not so. It's not part of my life. There's no truth in that. There's no reality. There's no foundation. There is no divine principle behind it. I heard someone talking the other day, and I found this kind of funny. They were saying something like, well, you're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to your facts. Well, in truth, even your facts may be more of an opinion than you realize oftentimes, because what we call as facts are only those things that we have accepted either individually or as the human race as facts. And oftentimes they're not. They're not truth. They're just facts. And facts sometimes they're not worth spending time over. We got to move beyond that. We got to move from facts to truth. Principle is not bound by precedent. When I first heard that, for some reason, I don't know why, I had an issue trying to get that memorized. But to me, it was one of those outrageously incredible statements of what is. Principle is not bound by precedent. And yet, in ignorance, we have found ourselves bound to things that we accept as being so, facts or whatever. And they're not. We move beyond those things. That's what this truth teaching is about. When you know the truth will truly set us free. But there's responsibility that comes in that process of knowing. And in the knowing, we have to also know that we have to put it into practice in our lives. We have a purpose for being here. We have a purpose for living the life that we live. And our purpose is to express our life with higher, greater degrees of livingness. And livingness, there's one life. That life is God. And so as we're looking at livingness, we're not talking about all those things that aren't in alignment with principle. We're talking about those things that are God expressing in our life, as God expressing through us into our life. We're going to take our last break. I'll see you when we come back.
Hey, I'm Chris DeVold. Tune in every Friday night on CentralValleyTalk.com when I bring you Sex, Drugs, Chris DeVold, where I'll give you 3 guesses on what we talk about. And I also vow to bring you 1 live local music act a week. So tune in every week because you never know what kind of music you're going to hear right here on CentralValleyTalk.com.
Hello everyone, my name is Miss G. I offer fun and affordable promotion and advertisement on my talk show. It is called Fresno Vibes. We talk, we play awesome music. I also feature a bunch of different bartenders from different places. I like to have restaurants. I like to have any event, any kind of fun stuff. Contact me at rmgmissg@gmail.com and we will have so much fun and we will promote your business, promote your event right here on my show. So contact me. We'll have fun. Thank you.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I think I covered basically what it was I wanted to cover today. And like I said, the views expressed in this particular video are solely and only mine. If I brought judgment to the show today, I'll work on it, believe me, because I will review this. But I do believe, and it is my belief, that we can do better than we're doing. I believe that, the world today is crying out for the truth to be expressed. We can accept the materiality of the world as being our defining truth, or we can look at what's going on in the world today. Pick a part in the world. I'm not talking about any particular individualized aspect, but we can make a claim. We can see a discordant fact and know it not to be truth. We can start making claims within ourselves as we speak our word. We make those claims based in our understanding, our learning, and our embodiment of truth as an expression of God, expressing as each and every one of us, knowing that as we express our life experience, that in reality that it is the divine principle that is expressing through us as life, that we can open ourselves up to be divinely guided and guarded in all things. We can turn ourselves away from those things that, it's kind of fun to gossip sometimes, isn't it? Well, is it really fun? Is it really life affirming, or do we do that because there's some beliefs that we hold that maybe we need to examine and reevaluate? It's done unto us as we believe. There's some solid teaching that can be found in the master teacher that people often tend to overlook for themselves. Maybe we can enjoy it on Sunday. There's a lot of individuals that, well, if I'm not in class, taking a class, or they're on Sunday necessarily, or working with a practitioner, they don't give much thought to it. And yet it's something that we should be affirming within as ourself each and every day. It's not like we need to be ascetics or anything like that, but we should be practicing every day. Practice, making improvement. As we improve ourselves, we lift the world up around us. There is some level. And for the life of me, I read it in one of Dr. Holmes' books years and years ago, and I can't remember where it was that I read it, but he talked about this very issue, that he believed there was some level of the world population, and we're talking percentage-wise, that when they got it, when they begin to understand and put into practice these new thought religious science principles, that the entire world would go through an instantaneous change and up level, if you will, and humanity would change. It's not so far-fetched. We know that if you happen to have read Rupert Murdoch's The New Science of Life, when he talks about the morphogenic field, if you've read Ken Kai's book, The 100th Monkey, if you've read about the experiments that the Maharishi University did about what they call the Maharishi effect, there's many different areas out there where you can look, and these ideas are being discussed as, accepted within the family of science on some level as being practical things that can have an effect on what's going on around them. And the one commonality between all of that is this thing called consciousness. As we were created in the image and the likeness of God, we were created in the image and likeness of consciousness. And within consciousness, we have the ability to think. And thoughts are things, and things are formative. And through thoughts, through that formative power, creation takes place. That's not something that, we look and say, well, yeah, that's what God did back in the day. No, that's what's ongoing now, and that's what's ongoing in our life. if you accept the premise of New Thought, of religious science, we are always in the process of creating in our life. What is it that we want to create? Do we want to create out of ignorance? Do we want to create consciously? Do we want to create a world of more good, more abundance, more peace, more harmony, more love for ourselves, if nothing else? But, consider it for ourselves and everything else. What's the difference between those two thoughts? What's the difference between believing that, I can really get into this, but I can make exceptions in my life about certain things that hold me out as a separate beingness, if you will, from divine principle? When are we going to be willing to take that line and erase it and no longer buy into it? My personal belief is, as we evolve New Thought, religious science, if we evolve back to that understanding, if you will, call it old school New Thought, I think we'll see a change within New Thought. I think we'll see a change in the world. I don't believe that we need to have New Thought 2.0 per se. We may need to have Reverend Steve 2.0 to experience religious science 2.1, to embody it in my life, to make some changes within me, to upgrade, if you will. And as I do, maybe the original programming, the instruction of scientific mental healing may still be as valid today as it was once claimed to be. We either accept that what these pioneers claimed that they did as truth, or we have to say, well, they wrote a nice story, but given our experience today with what we understand, we need to reevaluate this. We need to upgrade it. We need to add more. Holmes said it was open at the top. So let's throw a lot of other stuff in there so we can see if that will give us what we're looking for, or if that will make us more spiritual, even though we can't ever be more spiritual than we are right now. As spiritual beings, can't be done. But what we can do is recognize the truth of who we are. And that's what they taught. And as we know the truth will set us free. As we know the truth and we put it into practice, we will see the truth demonstrated. Those are old New Thoughts, if you will. And, I find myself being drawn more to that than to a lot of the newer titles that sit on my bookshelves. It's just, at some point in time, I just came to that point, and I haven't been disappointed. I hope you won't be disappointed either. I hope you've enjoyed our show today. Generally I don't necessarily address things from my own perspective. I like to share with you the things that I share based on the teachers that teach. And I know that they were much better versed at it than I am. And all I can do is bring it to you, that you may pick up a book, you may decide to look something up and add it to your library, put it into practice in your life. And if you do that, then I've done what my intention of being here is to do. So I'm going to call it a wrap for today. I hope, like I say, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope there's things that at least, if nothing else, have given you food for thought. My true hope and my treatment is that for each and every one of you that are out there watching this now or later as a video, that whether you necessarily ascribe to or believe my perspective, you do take in your own life and put whatever it is that you believe as New Thought or religious science of mind and spirit to be, that you put it into practice every day. And so it is. As you go through the week, know that the light of God surrounds you, the love of God enfolds you, the power of God protects you, the presence of God watches over you. Wherever you are, God is, all is well. See you next week, my friends. Talk to you later.